Hello, good afternoon. It is the afternoon of Wednesday, December 18th. This is session number 2 for today, and we are working with C# and .NET to build an admin application that is going to kind of automate the stuff that needs to happen whenever somebody signs up for or signs up for a subscription, or the subscription renews, or God forbid they say, I've had it, I quit. For this product I've built, the DM's familiar. It's not available yet. I need to get this automation in place first. And this morning we started working on implementing the different kinds of changes that need to be made to a customer's account and their the application system, local view of their subscription, stuff like that. So I introduced a subscription change strategy concept, and that's a base class. And then I'm going to have an individual implementation class for each kind of change that can be made to a customer's subscription. And I've got a factory set up to return the correct form of that subscription changer based on the kind of request that comes in from wherever. Comes in through the API, which I haven't even designed yet, but I'm designing the backend systems that will actually provide the functionality that can be requested through the API. So let's main screen turn on, what you say? And until now, my ApplyChange method is taking in a bunch of stuff and it's just returning a customer subscription. And it's got to do a bunch of operations that may or may not succeed. And I want a way of sending the information about problems it runs into back to whoever's consuming this thing. So I've changed my regular stuff over to use, or I'm in the process of changing that over to using the request and response pattern that I've been using throughout this application. It's still not in a couple of spots. I think I'm not using it on the user profile resource access thing, or the account resource access yet, but I'm sure I'm going to get that implemented in short order. So I want to build out a change strategy request. And right now, the operation request accepts a single type. And the change strategy request, of course, inherits from operation request. It's got one hardened payload piece, and that's what we want to be altering. But we also have some other necessary things that have to be part of this request. So what I'm going to do is overload the constructor on this guy. And just to give a better view of what the parameters look like, I'm going to do that thing that a lot of people sneer at. And I'm going to put my parameter list in their own little collapsible, or their own little area of vertical space here. So here's my change strategy request. It requires an operation request, which is the parent, and that gives us, it allows us to propagate the metadata throughout the call chain. And it takes in the customer subscription as a payload, but we've got other things that we need in this change strategy in the request. So I'm going to add another constructor, and I'm going to make this guy private. And I'm going to add a public change strategy request. And it's going to accept operation request, which is parent request. It's going to accept a customer subscription. It's going to accept a subscription action detail. And it's going to accept a subscription template resource. And I need to tell it where to find the definition of that. And then it's going to chain to the base. Actually, it's going to chain to this parent request. Subscription to update. And then I'm just going to pop out one level of indent and add, oh, I do need to set properties for this stuff. So, prop subscription action detail. Excuse me. And I'm going to call this change detail. Prop subscription template resource is going to be target subscription template. And let's just simplify that and shorten it down to target template. And then finally, I'm going to add one more pass-through property to the payload. Subscription to update. And I'm actually going to hard implement the getters and setters on this. Return payload. Throw new invalid operation exception. Payload is null because it should never be null. And payload equals value. And as a matter of fact, this customer subscript, this nullable payload, it's not even going to be callable. And that is that. And for this guy, we're actually going to suppress this issue. Non-nullable field, blah, blah, blah. Hey, C Films, what's up, buddy? It's okay to suppress this issue here because this constructor is private and called only from the complete form of the constructor that does initialize the required properties. There we go. And then I'm going to just hide that. And I can hide this. We can collapse these. And we're good. So, before we can invoke this guy, well, we should probably change the signature on this stuff. Now, I don't expect to be performing any IO bound or heavy long-running compute inside ApplyChange because I'm basically providing these strategy class or these implementation classes for the strategy with everything they're going to need to be able to perform these transformations. So I'm not going to wrap this in a task and make this an async method. So this will become a change strategy response. And this is becoming a change strategy request. There we go. Now, out here in the customer builder, we've got, it's complaining about something down here because change strategy request, change request equals new. And because it's multi-parameter on that constructor, I'm going to put each one on its own line just for readability's sake. Yep, I like that. Change strategy response equals, and I'm just going to call it change response. It's change strategy dot apply change. Change request. Save. What's all this stuff doing? Perform subscription activity. If response dot is successful equals false. I gotta come take a look at this. Go up here, take a look at operation response. We gotta go to the I have not seriously looked at F#. It does some really interesting things. Just plain old successful. It's got some really interesting ideas behind it. I've not mucked around with functional programming a whole lot, but it's got some fascinating patterns to it that I actually quite appreciate the elegance of it. Q#, again, fascinating, but I don't really have room in my head for academia at this point in time. Add errors, change strategy response. I want to add a property to this. And public bool change complete, completed, get set. Customer profile, and of course we've got the request to get the original data as part of this thing. So up here in change strategy base, I don't have to make any more changes. Customer builder, response.successful equals false. I'm going to say, yeah, that's fine if, and not response.successful, but if change response equals false, response.add errors. Okay. If change response dot change completed equals false, I am going to add a service error. Did not complete successfully. Perform subscription activity. Step failed, current step. Change strategy. apply subscription activity. I'm going to change this to apply subscription change. Okay. This is just us handling the return of that operation. Response.payload equals profile to update the unmodified profile. Otherwise, response.payload equals change response dot payload. Is that what I need? That's a customer profile. Good. And then we're going to return the response. Yeah, Q# is a really, really neat concept. It's basically .NET for quantum computing. I'm very curious. I'm very, very curious. So CreateSubscription strategy does not implement an abstract member. That's right, because I need to no suitable method found to override. Perfect. Yeah. By refactoring the base class method, I broke the CreateSubscription strategy. Easy fix. Easy, easy, easy fix. So this becomes a change strategy response. This becomes a change strategy request. All right. And now we're going to introduce a validator. New file. And it's going to be a class. And it's going to be internal validators. Actually, change validators. And I'm not actually even going to call it this. I'm going to call one of the classes change request validator. It's going internal. It's going to implement iValidator of change strategy request. We're going to implement this bad boy. Bam! Validates the request object for a change. And all we do is list of service errors equals a new list, and if instance is null, service error equals new boop, and We're going to add the error, return them right away. And how do I set these up elsewhere? Here's a create subscription strategy. We can close these. Change validators. Yeah, I know. Return errors. Instance is null. Nothing else makes sense. Return early. Save that. Reconcile memberships request. Close that. Let's come out to the customer builder. And all I'm going to set is the message and the severity. And the error kind. So message equals change strategy instance request. Change strategy request instance is null. Severity equals error severity dot error. And error kind equals service error kinds dot request validation. Save. Pardon me. Errors dot add error, return errors, return errors. Okay, I am not setting the site here. And this is one of the things that needs to be good. All right. Now we want to validate that the contents of the request, just the immediate contents, are present. So if instance dot customer profile equals null, customer profile isn't a thing. Subscription to update equals null. Subscription to update may sometimes be null. So change details is null. Request validation. Yep. Error severity error. Change details is null. And we're just going to add that. We're not going to return. Because we want to accumulate errors wherever possible. If instance dot target template is null, and I have to spell it right. Target template is null, request validation, errors dot add error. And finally, if instance dot subscription to update is null, yeah, functional. I really ought to read up more on functional programming philosophies and that style, because I've seen a lot of talk and a little bit of evidence. And the only reason I've seen a little bit of evidence is because I haven't dug for it. But there are an awful lot of concepts that are inherent to functional programming that I think could have very rich benefits for those of us in the more object-oriented or procedural or service-oriented world. Object-oriented programming can add a lot of boilerplate code, an awful lot of boilerplate code. Severity equals error severity dot warning is null. The requested change operation may require an instance of this. A not null instance of this, depending on the context. So I'm going to send this back as a warning. So save. So there's the first change validator. And really the only boilerplate code I see on this object here is this part. Now you see me building up a lot of these errors and everything like that, and I could go ahead and throw a constructor on here and all of that crap, but you know what, man? I don't need it because I don't always want to set every one of these properties. And I could build a constructor with a bunch of optional parameters that have default values and blah, 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 blah. And nah. I don't mind this kind of implicit build thing here where I just assign what I want. Excuse me. So create subscription strategy. So there's that. We're over here. Oh, this is in the customer builder. So when we're adding the errors, there is something that I should do. And that is string error site equals that and update the site on any incoming errors if their site property is empty. Excuse me. Only if error site has a value and their error site. Error site has a value. So, hey dude, pull this over to the main, has error kind, clear error kind. and private enumerable of service error, update error sites. There's that. Return errors.select. If string.is null or white space, that means a capital S. We're just going to bail out, return the errors as they are. Otherwise, return no. For each service error in errors dot where e.site is null or white space. We're going to update error.site to error site, and then we're going to return errors. All right, that should be fine. And spin back up here to our add errors. Donor equals update error sites. Pass in the donor and the error site. Donor dot underscore errors collection. What are you bitching about? IEnumerable of service errors. Oh, come on. Pardon me. List of service errors. Add explicit cast. Fine. Oh, duh. Var errors equals update error sites. Errors. Derp. Errors equals update error sites. And then add them. Save. Okay, so change strategy, apply change. If it's successful, add errors. And this guy is an error site. String this error site is name of customer builder, perform subscription activity, rename. No. Perform subscription action. There, I like that better. Site equals this error site. There we go. I'm going to grab this. And anywhere that I am adding that, we're just going to replace it with that. Down here. And I realize that I'm doing some procrastination here. Action detail, change strategy, add errors, and I'm going to pass in this error site because I'm not going to set the site on any errors, like especially the validation errors. I'm not going to set the site property on those validation errors. I'm going to set those so that we can tell that the validation occurred in the context of the customer builder perform subscription action. And that's that. Okay. There should be like a word that's a combination of refactoring and procrastination. Procrastination, refactoring. I'll come up with something. All right, let's take a look at our create subscription strategy. Very first thing we need to do is create the response. Change strategy response. Response equals new change strategy response, and we have to feed it the request. What are you complaining about? Payload is customer profile. Updated profile equals null. And because I've got that custom property on there, response dot change completed equals false. Return response. Var request errors equals new change validator dot validate request. If request errors dot any nope, I'm going to say response dot add errors request errors. If response dot has errors, we're going to return the response right away. Now, has errors, I feel like I want to alias this public bool should halt process. And it's just going to alias has errors. Now, rather than bounce and do that and muck up my call stack, I'm just going to do that. Yes, this is just a repetition of has errors. I'm looking at your suggestions. I kind of like refactination. Refactination is all right. Refactination. It's a little harder to pronounce, but it's a better portmanteau of refactor and procrastination, I think. Refactination. It could also be a portmanteau of refactor and consternation, which currently go hand in hand. This is just a repetition of has errors. I've added this for improved semantic clarity. So let's come back out here, and if response dot should halt process, we're going to return the response. Oh, that's pretty. What do you think about that, C Films? I really, really, really like the way that reads. Oh, yes. Okay. So, the next thing I need is to validate the var subscription equals, excuse me. Now I'm going to come back out to change request validator, and I'm going to break a personal rule. I'm going to come in here and add internal class subscription validator, iValidator of customer subscription. Now, there's the global one. Service error is new if instance is null. Customer subscription instance is null. This is a warning. Errors.add error, return errors. Now, that's really the only thing that Subscription status is .active and instance, blah, 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 blah. It really tried to guess at what kinds of things I wanted to validate on a subscription. But really, this is the only thing that I care. It's not even really a big deal here. So customer subscription. Let's take a look at the properties on here. So the user ID, we're going to need this. We're going to need the SKU for the subscription. Start date, end date, whatever. Will renew, current status, quotas. See, a lot of this is dependent on the context of the change. But there's some obvious things. So here's our change request validator.validate. Let's come back to the change validators. Pardon me. And we're going to add an overload. I think it needs to be an overload. Maybe. Where's the complaint? Subscription template resource. I mean, yeah, but this isn't going to give us what we need here. String. I've got a default implementation on the iValidator class. Workload name. I'm going to change this to activity context. Save. Now, here's the global general validations. String, activity context. And I believe I need to override. Nope. No, I don't. So service list errors equals null. We're going to get rid of all of this action detail and all of this other stuff. And if subscription change kinds dot allowed values dot contains activity context equals false. Activity context is not a valid subscription change kind. It's going to be an error. Request payload validation. We're going to add that error, and we're going to return the errors. Because if the subscription instance is null, we probably can't continue. If the if the activity context isn't valid, we can't continue. But we can there's got to be a more elegant way of doing this. And I feel like the way to encapsulate this stuff would be out of my CreateSubscription strategy. Instead of all this crap, we know our activity context is going to be create. So this will return a list of service error. And validate inbound subscription. And that would be a customer subscription to update. Get rid of that. Hey, what's up, Sim? How are you? So instead of completely externalizing and making that a thing, I think when we're doing things in a contextual manner, I am not going to override this at all for this. Not even a bit. We're going to leave this be. And what I'm going to do is pass. We're going to come over to iValidator, go to the definition, and IEnumerable of service error, validate T instance, and then we are going to pass a func of T that returns IEnumerable of service error contextual delegate. And this guy, he's just going to pass through to validate instance by default. And then when we override it by manually implementing it on a validation class, we'll get the goodies. So what this means is instead of having to keep track of, okay, well, I need a specific set of validations for the create, but my create activities are all over here, what I'm going to do is on my create subscription strategy, I'm going to create a function that accepts the inbound subscription and does all this stuff and just checks that customer subscription for, excuse me, things that it cares about within the context of creating a new subscription. So when we're creating a new subscription, what do we care about? The current subscription when we're creating a new subscription. Well, the first thing we have to do, this guy needs to become an IEnumerable. And then up here, var subscription errors equals new customer subscription validator, or is it just subscription validator? Dot validate, and we're going to pass in a request dot subscription to update and validate inbound subscription. And over here, I'm going to say public IEnumerable of service error, return contextual delegate instance, save. Are you still complaining? I think I could just do that. And then over in the validators, I just call that func. And our validation logic, or our validation calls, are consistent and cohesive for every possible scenario that we may come up with. We just provide the local validation method, which is otherwise unreachable. List of service error, error is equals new, return errors, we're implemented, we're validating. And then we return the response. Response.add errors, subscription errors, if response.should halt process, out we go. Now we can validate the other important parts of the request with request and data validation complete. We can proceed with the transformation activity. And rather than have me hum and haw about all of the things that I need to do, I'm going to go ahead and implement this offline. And tomorrow, we're going to talk through all of the steps that performing the CreateSubscription transformation takes. We're going to review the code and so on and so forth in the first session that I do tomorrow morning. Because I do have some hemming and hawing to do here. I've also got what feels like an ocular migraine coming on, so I better go just take some Tylenol and lie down and hope that this goes away, because it's really hard to code when large sections of your field of vision are replaced with black spots surrounded by Technicolor lightning bolts. It's not fun. So, and it's not a serious thing. I get these all the time. They happen in clusters, and I got one last night, which means I'm due for a week or so of having this nonsense occur as I go. It's usually because I'm overstimulated and I've had too much caffeine, and I've had too much caffeine today. So I've got the things that I need to figure out listed here. What do we care about the current subscription when we're creating a new subscription? Stuff like that. We might need more supporting data in here, and that could be troublesome. That could be exceptionally troublesome. Oh, migraines suck, dude. Mine rarely get to the pain stage. It's usually just this annoying state of just having these blind spots. And if it gets really bad, I'll lose like my ability to string words together into coherent sentences, which is really fun if I'm interacting with people, because then they get really, really scared and worried. And it's like, oh no, it's just a migraine coming on. I promise I'm not engaged in any kind of internally inflicted traumatic brain injury. I promise. But yeah, it's always not much fun to watch. So I'm not going to put y'all through that. So thanks for coming in and joining and hanging out. These are not blue light glasses, and computer displays don't typically set me off. It's usually bright sunlight or reflections of bright sunlight that hit me suddenly, because it's been really cloudy and foggy here where I live all day today. Like this morning, it looked like I was either in Ravenloft or Silent Hill. And then the sun came out and it bounced off something metal outside my window and straight into my eyeballs and triggered one of these weird ocular episodes. They suck. But I'm pretty sure it's that and my current over-caffeinated state that's causing the problem. I can be on screens until I remember that I'm a human being and need to be doing things like eating and drinking and going to the bathroom and sleeping and stuff like that. Screen time doesn't typically kick it in. It's just flashes of bright light that really screw me over. So, until tomorrow, take care of yourselves. Do something nice for somebody, whether that somebody is yourself or somebody random that you meet on the street. I don't care. Just do something nice for somebody. And until next time, happy coding. Bye now.